remember when I was a little girl, my grandma talking about the old London subway. Trains under the ground. New York had 'em as well. Of course, that was before this newfangled overhead monorail system.
Hey, you may have something there. Scott, check and see if those subway tunnels are still in existence.
Look, Garnet, Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah, sure is a change from being up in space.
Come on, this way.
Hello. Tonight's South Bank show is set entirely on or in the London Underground Railway. The Underground's a real place. It's got 250 stations and 250 miles of track. But it's not an everyday means of transport that we're going to look at tonight. Instead, our film explores a labyrinth of tunnels and lost tube stations. This one, Wood Lane, the BBC's over the road, been closed since 1947. The Underground of the imagination is what tonight's film's about. From the age of steam, when Sherlock Holmes solved a murder on the Metropolitan line, through to the present-day poetry of Seamus Heaney, writers, painters, poets and musicians have used the Underground as a setting. Each age has its own perspective. Victorians were impressed with the power of electricity. In the 20s and 30s, the artists who designed posters saw it as a people's picture gallery. During the war, it was a symbol of resistance. It's through this subterranean world, a place of mystery and surprise, that we're going to travel in Tony Knox's film.
Some sort of grill. Oh, do say you've landed us in a prison. Could be the dungeons of a castle.
So dark.
Ah, steps. Hang on, be careful. Large room, tiled walls, curved ceiling. What seems to hang here? Hangs a sort of trench. Look.
Hey, Doctor, come and look at this.
What have you found, Victoria?
See for yourself.
Covent Garden. Oh, yes, of course. It's an underground station. We're standing on the platform.
Good Lord.
Luggage open, please.
Kindly make your currency declarations, please.
Have you anything to declare, madam? Any foodstuffs, livestock, linen or cotton goods?
No.
Any muskrats, mealworms, motorcycles, hashish, prepared opium or agricultural machinery?
The London Underground operates almost round the clock. But late at night comes a brief pause. Into the last station comes the last train.
Can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. Can't wait. Can't wait. Can't wait. I can't wait. I just can't wait.
connection. Clothes you can't wait to get into.
Well, we are here at the south end of Aldgate station platforms, close to Minories Junction. And it was at this point where in the story, the body of Cadogan West was found on the left-hand side of the track and outside of the rail bed, that is not in the 6-foot way between the rails, but on the outside. And we know that although it appeared that the body had fallen from the train, Holmes discovered later that it had actually been placed on the roof of the train at some considerable distance away from an overhanging window. Now, if it had travelled on the roof of the train, the question is what kind of train it had travelled on. Was it a circle train that had actually travelling in this direction, anti-clockwise round the circle on the inner rail, sweeping this way into Aldgate on its way round the northern half? Or was it some other train on one of the other services run along the south side of the circle, some of the district, the Metropolitan District services from West London, which did not come into Aldgate, but swept round through over those points, you see the points there, and the crossovers, and took that right-hand curve to Aldgate East.
This is where the young man's body lay.
Aha. What is it, Holmes? Points. The points and a curve, too. Points and a curve. Is there a great number of points on this section of the line?
Very few, sir.
What is it, Mr. Holmes? You got a clue? An indication.
I believe that when Holmes came here and he exclaimed, points and a curve, I think it was that curve he was really referring to, and that the train was therefore one which didn't come into this station, but in fact took that right-hand curve round to Aldgate East, across those rattling points, and made the carriage lurch, and so the body would have fallen off, probably just past the crossover here, somewhere in between these two sets of rails.
Everything fits together. Well, it suggests a few questions we might ask.
Refresh my memory about it. Where exactly did Holmes deduce that the body joined the train? Wasn't it Gloucester Road?
Yes, around Cromwell Junction, between Gloucester Road and Earl's Court in West London, somewhere in that district, where the district and circle lines join together. Yeah. And I think that's where we have to search. Wall we can see over around here. Yes, there's an overbridge just round the corner here from which we can get a different viewpoint of the house. Should be interesting. We have the original of Oberstein's house, 13 Coalfield Gardens.
Which one exactly, Bernard?
Number 28 there, with that little extra bit sticking.
Ah, yes.
Because that was the only one
in 1895, which had that piece stretching out so close to the parapet wall at the top of the cutting, from which it would have been practical to have opened that sash window and two men maneuver that body out onto the parapet wall and swung it over and onto the roof of a train below in the fog. Of course, it was a longer drop than Watson makes out, him and his 4 feet, you know.
Tell me, I noticed that trains seem to come straight by here. Do they stop very often there? Because...
Not very often nowadays. They've altered the signalling. But 30 years ago, when I first investigated this case, they used to stop frequently, just outside, leaving the Earl's Court platform right under that window, often. Yes, and I think they did in steam days, because there was a signal post just down here which held them up for Cromwell Junction when the Circle trains were coming round. They had to stop. And I think that, having combed the thing pretty thoroughly all around here, I found that number 28 there, the only possible house in which I think Hugo Overstein could have dropped that body onto that train in the fog.
In the third week of November 1895, a dense yellow fog settled down upon London. From the Monday to the Thursday, I doubt whether it was ever possible to see from our windows in Baker Street the loom of the opposite houses. Holmes paced restlessly about our sitting room in a fever of suppressed guilt.
Is it an ocean? Or a city? Or a seabed? Let's pretend. Put on your dolphin kit. Look, it's a secret. Cross my heart and hope to die, if ever I should tell a lie. This is a magical kingdom, if you have half an ear, or eye.
Don't this old conveyor belt run lovely?
Yes.
Better than the one we got in the pit.
Very nice. You know, we ought to be thinking about getting that ring dye.
Oh, that's right, best one we can find. Gee, look at the headroom they've got here.
And will Cambry. La 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 la.
Tom!
Give
us the art, Tom!
La 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 la.
Paddington, cried Judy, you're going the wrong way. But it was too late. By the time he'd realized his mistake, Paddington was at the top of the stairs again. I'm sorry, said Paddington. I'm not used to escalators. We don't have any in darkest Peru.
My paper. What I I do things that might really happen on the tube. You know, a lot of people must see me. They say, oh, I saw something very funny happen on the tube, you know, the other day. Well, that's probably me, because let me tell you straight away, eccentrics in London on the tube are not increasing. It's tube theatre at work, you see. I sort of do a show where, you know, someone says, oh, I saw this funny thing happen on the tube. But what happens, I condense, I should say, a lifetime's funny incidents into one show. So I regard this as not just entertainment on the tube, but sort of a social service, you know, because someone coming home, he's a bit depressed and, you know, in fact, maybe even feels suicidal, but he sees me and he realizes there's someone worse off than he is. So it does help. I think my ambition is to be entertainment's officer at London Transport. Oh, I forgot to ask, yes, one important thing, your admission fee. Okay, it's £3.10 per person, okay? Okay. Oh.
Now, what's the matter?
I'm terribly sorry to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I'm a little nervous. I'm going back.
By yourself?
Do you realize that if by any chance the train should come, we're absolute cliff?
Now, look here. I refuse to discuss this question of trains with you anymore. Once and for all, the last train.
Boat going over now. So we're right underneath the River Thames. Actually, we're almost in the centre of the river here. It was really constructed as a sort of egotistical trip, I suppose, for a group of Victorians who wanted to promote themselves. James Henry Greathead was the man who was responsible for actually constructing the tunnels. And he was a pupil of a man called Barlow, who, when he was constructing the suspension bridge at Lambeth, had an idea for constructing tube railways by boring the tunnels through the clay by pushing a shield forward rather than digging the roads up, building the tunnel and putting a roof on top. Well, the government told the company they couldn't use steam in a enclosed space like this, so they had to find another form of traction. And electricity wasn't really in its infancy at that stage, you know, it hadn't even got that far. It was a new form of traction that was possible. And there have been various attempts on tramways around the world, and there have been experiments in England. And they decided that they were going to throw everything into this. I mean, it was an amazing thing to do in those days, to actually risk the whole project on something as new as this. Because you've got to look at the project in its entirety. Here you had a tunnel which wasn't really going to the right sort of places. You've got an experimental form of construction. Everyone in the city was saying it's going to be a total disaster. And now, to add another disaster, or another possible disaster to it, you throw in electric traction, which no one has ever tried before. And they decided to give it a bash, and they built the locomotive, the very first locomotive. Within about 6 months, they designed, tested and built it. And in fact, one of those locomotives still survives, and in fact, there's still a man alive who drove it.
The floorboards are missing in there. Number 21 loco, she was a lovely engine. She was very fast, they could pull anything. And she had you had to put the controller, there's a big controller here, and you had to press down each notch you made. And then you got round into series, see? And unfortunately, she got excited one day, and she jumped the rails as she was entering Kennington Station, and plowed the platform up a bit.
The generating plant built to power the new electric railway was the wonder of its age. It's not surprising that among those who paid tuppence to visit it was H.G. Wells, who began a century of science fiction interest in the power of electricity with his story, Lord of the Dynamos.
There were 3 dynamos with their engines at Camberwell. The smaller machines made a reasonable noise, but the big dynamo drowned these little noises altogether with the sustained drone of its iron core, which somehow set part of the ironwork humming. Those 2 smaller dynamos Azuma Zi despised. The large one he privately christened the Lord of the Dynamos. How great it was, how serene and easy in its working. Greater and calmer even than the Buddhas he had seen in Rangoon, and yet not motionless, but living. The great black coils spun, spun, spun. The rings ran round under the brushes, and the deep note of its coil steadied the whole. It affected Azuma Zi queerly.
We ought to go in there. I'm sure it's private property.
Yes, somebody's back garden.
Yeah. Terribly dark. If you were really Drummond, you'd have a torch.
And if you were really my assistant, you'd have brought one. Oh, I'm sorry for all the unkind things I've said to you.
Imagine having David Hockney designing a new poster for the Underground every month. That's the sort of thing that happened between the wars. People like Paul Nash, Graham Sutherland, Man Ray, they were all doing posters. But there was one man whose name isn't so well known, who was the best of them all. He was an American called E. McKnight Kauffer.
This is the first poster Kauffer ever did for the Underground, 1915. He actually came to London in 1914 from Paris when the war broke out. he had no money at all. He was washing dishes in a restaurant, and somebody said he should go and visit Frank Pick at the Underground and maybe he'd get work. He got a commission for 2 posters, landscapes, the first one for the North Downs and then another for Godstone. And he used modern painting idiom, and it suited poster art perfectly. This is when Kauffer really gets cracking as a poster artist. It's 1921, winter sales. He mixed things up. He made cocktails out of styles. And what he did with this, he admired Toulouse-Lautrec immensely. He said Lautrec passed over the world of the poster like a comet. And then the other ingredient is hokusai. It's Japanese woodblock printing. And there's a hokusai print of people racing through the streets of Edo with their umbrellas up in the driving rain and so on. And that's what Kauffer used as the starting point for this poster. This is part of a set of posters advertising London museums that Frank Pick commissioned from Kauffer in 1922. There was apparently a little diorama at the museum, and you wound a little handle and flames shot everywhere. And Kauffer somehow translated that into a sort of visual machine. Everything coils up like sort of conveyor belts and escalators and so on, and that's the smoke from the burning down of Great St. Paul's in 1666. Kauffer is again right on the button. This is 1925. That's what they were doing in 1925, and he was doing it better than anyone. Then he changes again, and he does this wonderful work, Winter's Gloom to Summer's Joy, 1927. And at this point, he's designing posters and titles for Hitchcock's film The Lodger. So you get these menacing figures walking through the fog and rain of London. Then, at the end of the 20s, he discovers German modernism with a bang, and he does it with terrific drive and verve. The last poster of this incredible sequence of 150 posters for the Underground was done to advertise the Natural History Museum in 1938. It uses a lot of new ideas out of surrealism, Dali in particular, but it only reached proof stage. It was never printed because the war had come, and slowly and surely the posters were all blacked out, and that was the end of Kauffer's career on the London Underground.
Safe there, I suppose. So stick your fingers up your nose, but let's all go down the tube.
There was just one ambition, that was to get away from the streets, get down there, to get into the Underground. It seemed the obvious place. We made for Liverpool Street Station. That was the nearest deep shelter. But we couldn't get down there. There were police stopping our path. I remember coming against the barrier that was right across the entrance, And we were all trying, pulling this barrier, screaming, shouting, let's get down, let's get down. And I remember suddenly the tension, the police sort of rearing towards us. And a voice went up. They're opening it up. It's a great, great victory for the working class, my father said. I thought, what the hell's this, Apparently, Churchill had decided that it was the obvious thing to do. A lot of opposition to us sheltering. And again, the class war was there, And that was it. We went straight down. And from then on, it was every man for himself.
When the authorities tried to shut the gates, that wouldn't be on because people would buy tickets ostensibly to get on the trains. But of course, in reality, they just got down to the platforms. Well, it became so that the government at the time realised that might just as well open the gates and let everybody shelter there. And of course, most people did. Women with children and so forth. Well, after a night or two, they realised it's damn hard sleeping on the floor of the station, so they brought certain bedding with them. Some bought mattresses if they weren't too big, some blankets or anything like that, and they went down there. Well, as far as possible, it became a routine in as much that a wife would try and reserve a place for her husband. She had the children with her.
My mother was terrified, so after one night we'd had enough and she decided that we should go down to the London Bridge tube station because that was the deepest, or as far as we know, at that particular time. And of course when we got down there it was, really chock-a-block with people. There was bodies everywhere. There was, kids screaming and, mums sort of sobbing and crying and...
All the places have gone. We better go further down the tunnel. You run on there. Get enough for all of us. Get enough space for all of us, right? Right.
Christ. The shape of things to come.
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to get used to it, I suppose.
And if you were lucky, you could lie full length on the platforms. If not, you just took pot luck wherever you could get it. And there's nobody you could complain to because nobody asked you to go down there.
On almost any night during a raid, this figure might be seen wandering about. Henry Moore, the sculptor. Here, perhaps, was the one artist most capable of immortalizing the stoic endurance and suffering of these people. As a sculptor in stone and wood, Henry Moore is interested in the poses of sitting and reclining figures. And he was keen to emphasize this strange, vault-like atmosphere.
Now and again you get somebody start maybe humming or start singing, It was more nerves than anything else, And of course you had to get everybody to start singing, and all of a sudden somebody get a piano accordion out, and I think it was just to forget.
everyone was so happy and it was all one, and, you know, the Cockney spirit. And I don't want to go too far the other way, because it wasn't, you know, people weren't tearing at each other. But I mean, it was every man for himself, virtually. It was a very, very hard. I mean, look, there's also this fear that when you go up in the following morning, there'd be nothing left. When you came out, I mean, you literally would walk along the street thinking, is my house still there? So, I mean, there's all that, and tension doesn't make for a lot of joy or hilarity. You took the child games down with you. The whole new ritual began. Passages, hide and seek became merely transferred underground. And then, of course, there was the things that one normally would be aware of as a child, the growing awareness of sexuality, the closeness, the proximity. After all, the nights are usually for a family to be very intimate with itself, but here suddenly you were thrust into this strange situation. Strangers next to you, with the smells of people, you know, the farting that was going on, the masturbation, you know, I mean, kids are kids. And of course, suddenly you see this beautiful young girl beside you in her bunk that she's trying to shield off from you, but naturally you want to have a look.
You're a sweetheart, if there ever was one.
Sweetheart, it's true.
If there ever was one, it's you.
And if it's you, there is no other one, no.
Why did my heart go boom? Me and my heart go boom, boom, buddy, boom, 'cause I found you. Boom, when you are near.
Fellas and girls used to make appointments, or dates, as we call it now, to meet their other halves on the platform. They weren't married to each other, but it was a good means of getting to know people.
Train out, usually a crowded one, carrying passengers who fraternize freely in an atmosphere of tobacco smoke and hops. But where that picture ends, another begins. The working day of a corps of women employed by the London Passenger Transport Board has started. They're the Mrs. Mops of the Underground, the women who dry clean the miles of tunnel in our vast subterranean railway system. In other words, Pathé cameraman Frank Basil is introducing you in this exclusive story to a section of women war workers known among themselves as fluffies. They go down on all fours to sweep and scrape up tons of fluff and dust that we have left behind in our travels. It coats the insulators of the conductor rails, becomes impregnated with metal filings from brake blocks, and packs up in every corner and crevice. Charlie, walking along there, is the foreman. A sweet job for a fella who likes a little bit of fluff. There's no time for reading between the lines, but a fag helps to take the taste of dust out of her mouth. It's a dirty job, all right. The walls of the tunnel are coated thick. Perhaps you hadn't realized it, but that is an accumulation of dust and fluff from passengers' clothing. A potential danger because it's inflammable.
I said to my soul, be still
And let the dark come upon you, which shall be the darkness of God. As when an underground train in the tube stops too long between stations, and the conversation rises and slowly fades into silence, and you see behind every face the mental emptiness deepen, leaving only the growing terror of nothing to think about.
After the initial 6 months thrill of driving a train, it's just the blackness all around you that, you know, I would say gets you a little bit down. That's why I prefer to have the cab light on most of the time.
Gal, I'm telling you, I'm tired for true. Tired of England, tired of you. But I can't go back to Jamaica now. I'm here in England. I'm drawing pay. I go to the underground every day. 8 hours is all. Half hour for lunch. My uniform's free and my ticket punch. Punching tickets not hard to do. And I'm tired of punching and let them through. I get a paid holiday once a year. Old age and sickness can't touch me here. I have a room of my own, and an iron bed, Dunlop pillow under my head, a Murphy Richards to warm the air, a Formica table, an easy chair. I have winter clothes and summer clothes and paper kerchiefs to blow my nose. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. I know a place I can go to any night. This place, England, I'm not complaining. If it's cold, it's cold. If it's raining, it's raining. I don't mind if it's mostly night. There's always inside, or the sodium light. I don't mind white people staring at me. They don't want me here. Don't is their country. You won't catch me bawling any homesick tears if I don't see Jamaica for 1,000 years. But, gal, I'm telling you, I'm tired for true. Tired of England, tired of you. I can't go back to Jamaica now, but I'd want to die there anyhow.
Been a train crash. What? Yeah, tube crash. Who the driver? Not a black man. Not a black man. I checked that first. Thank Almighty God. About 30 people dead. 30 people dead. Looks maybe more. Maybe more. Maybe more. And black man didn't drive. No, black man didn't drive.
There we were in the vaulted tunnel, running. You in your going-away coat, speeding ahead. And me then like a fleet god gaining upon you, before you turned to a reed, or some new white flower japped with crimson. As the coat flapped wild, and button after button sprang off and fell in a trail between the Underground and the Albert Hall. Honeymooning, moonlighting, late for the proms. Our echoes die in that corridor. And now I come as Hansel came on the moonlit stones, retracing the path back, lifting the buttons, to end up in a drafty, lamp-lit station after the trains have gone. The wet track, bared and tensed as I am, all attention for your step following. And damned if I look back.